Most people think money came first and debt came later. It seems obvious. After all, how can you owe someone money before money even exists? But history tells a very different story. In fact, many historians and anthropologists believe that debt is older than money, older than coins, older than banks, and possibly one of humanity's oldest inventions. To understand why, we need to travel back thousands of years, long before stock markets, long before credit cards, and long before anyone had ever held a coin in their hand. Imagine a small community of hunter-gatherers, a few dozen people living together, hunting together, gathering food together, surviving together. One day, a hunter returns with more meat than his family can eat, so he shares it with his neighbors. Does he demand immediate payment? Probably not, because everyone knows each other. Everyone expects to see each other tomorrow. Everyone understands that one day, the situation may be reversed. Maybe next week the hunter gets sick. Maybe his hunt fails. Maybe he comes home empty-handed. And when that happens, someone else helps him. No coins change hands. No receipts are written. No contracts are signed. Yet a transaction has clearly taken place. The hunter gave something valuable today in exchange for the expectation of receiving help in the future. In simple terms, that's a form of credit, a promise, an obligation, a debt. This idea may sound surprising because most of us were taught a different story. The story of barter. According to the traditional explanation, early humans traded goods directly. Someone with chickens exchanged them for fish. Someone with grain exchanged it for tools. Eventually, barter became inconvenient, so money was invented. Then, according to this story, debt appeared afterward. The problem is that historians have struggled to find evidence that large societies actually operated primarily through barter. Instead, many anthropologists discovered that communities often relied on relationships, trust, and ongoing obligations. People didn't constantly calculate exact exchanges with their neighbors. They simply remembered who had helped whom. The anthropologist Richard Lee, who studied hunter-gatherer societies in southern Africa, observed extensive sharing and cooperation within communities. People survived not because they accumulated wealth, but because they maintained strong social relationships. Helping others created obligations, and obligations created trust. In many ways, these obligations functioned like an invisible currency. But as human populations grew larger, a problem emerged. Trust works well when everyone knows each other. It becomes much harder when thousands of strangers begin living together. Around 5,000 years ago, some of the world's first cities emerged in Mesopotamia, a region located in present-day Iraq. These cities were larger and more complex than anything humanity had seen before. Farmers produced food. Merchants traded goods. Workers performed labor. Governments collected taxes. Suddenly, keeping track of obligations through memory alone was no longer possible. So, humans invented something revolutionary: record keeping. Ancient Mesopotamians began recording debts on clay tablets. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of these tablets. Many are over 4,000 years old. Some record grain deliveries. Others record wages. Others record taxes, rents, and loans. In other words, accounting. Long before modern banking existed, people were already keeping track of who owed what. And here's the fascinating part. Most of these records existed before the widespread use of coins. The world's earliest coins would not appear until much later, in the Kingdom of Lydia, located in present-day Turkey. For centuries, debts were being recorded, measured, and enforced without the need for physical money. In Mesopotamia, barley was often used as a unit of account. People measure value in grain, but actual grain didn't always need to move from one person to another. The important thing was the record, the promise, the obligation, the debt. As cities became larger, debt became one of the foundations of civilization. It allowed people to receive value today and repay it later. It allowed governments to collect taxes. It allowed merchants to expand trade. It allowed societies to coordinate activities on a scale that had never been possible before. But debt had one major weakness. It depended on trust, or at least on a shared system of records. Imagine meeting a merchant from a distant land, someone you've never met before, someone whose reputation you cannot verify. Would you accept a promise from that person? Probably not. And that challenge became increasingly important as trade routes expanded across continents. Merchants needed a way to exchange value instantly, without requiring a relationship, without requiring trust, without requiring a shared ledger. That is where money entered the story. Money solved a problem that debt could not. It allowed complete strangers to cooperate. A coin carried value with it. You didn't need to know who previously owned it. You didn't need a record book. You didn't need a promise. The coin itself was enough. Trade became faster. Markets became larger. And economies became more interconnected. But despite the rise of money, debt never disappeared. In fact, it became even more important. Today, most of the global economy still runs on debt. Mortgages, business loans, government bonds, credit cards, student loans, all of them are built on the same fundamental idea that existed thousands of years ago. A promise made today about the future. The technology has changed. Ancient scribes used clay tablets. Modern banks use computers. But the underlying principle remains surprisingly similar. This is why many historians argue that debt is older than money. Money did not create debt. Debt already existed. Money simply expanded the possibilities of trade. So the next time you hear that humans first invented barter, then money, and then debt, remember that history may tell a different story. First came trust, then came promises, then came debt, then came written records, and only later came money. Debt is not just a financial tool. It is one of the oldest social technologies ever created, an idea powerful enough to help build cities, governments, markets, and eventually entire civilizations. And in many ways, it still shapes the world we live in today.